Welcome to Week 10 of our course. This week we'll be discussing validation and quality for internal and contract organizations. The regulatory life cycle of a drug is a multi-step process. The stages of the product life cycle include the introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. The investment in the process and facilities depend on the stage of the life cycle. As discussed previously, the timeline for drug development includes the research and development, preclinical testing, phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials, the FDA review and ultimate approval, and finally, commercialization. Together, this timeline can take up to 16 years and cost as much as $500 million. When bringing a drug to the marketplace, there are really three options in terms of manufacturing. You can build your own plant, you can license the technology to a second company, or you can outsource production. A determining factor in this option can be market conditions, the need to expand the pipeline, or if there's a capacity shortage. So many companies use the ultimate solution of outsourcing. These are based on its ability to lower cost, to speed the time to market, and to decrease risk. There are several important considerations when outsourcing biomanufacturing services. First, it reduces your need to develop your own biomanufacturing facilities. It can facilitate the process development, it reduces the need for support services, and it improves manufacturing processes, leads to improved efficiency. So what is the rationale for using contract organizations? Well, for a biotech company, their needs are to minimize capital risk, to gain capacity and expertise, to maximize internal resources, and to reduce time to market by 1 to 2 years. And what these contract organizations provide are scalable facility and support services, improved scheduling and capacity utilization, improved manufacturing processes, and process and manufacturing expertise. So what are the opportunities in the manufacture of biopharmaceuticals? Well, many companies that manufacture and process pharmaceutical products include Bristol Myers Squibb, Eli Lilly, Johnson & Johnson, Merck & Company, and Pfizer, which are all based in the US, as well as AstraZeneca in the UK, Bayer in Germany, GlaxoSmithKline in the UK, Novartis in Switzerland, and Roche in Switzerland, and Sanofi in France. The worldwide annual revenue from pharmaceutical manufacturing is more than $1 trillion and is expected to grow to about $1.4 trillion by 2020. The worldwide spending on pharmaceuticals and medications is increasing due to the economic growth in developing nations and the rising cost of specialty drugs. The US and the UK markets remain the largest importers of pharmaceuticals, but manufacturers are now targeting emerging economies for growth. The global revenue for pharmaceutical contract manufacturing and research reached $196 billion in 2010, $218 billion in 2011, and is projected to reach $361 billion in 2016. This is increasing at a compound annual growth rate of 11%. There are many benefits to contract manufacturing. Pharmaceutical companies are finding that outsourcing their production abroad brings them cost and time savings. Production outside the pharmaceutical company does not come without risk. A company must identify the factors that make it competitive in the marketplace. It is only when a company can maintain its core competencies that outsourcing is effective. Biotech companies outsource to concentrate on marketing their products. This enables the company to spend less time on drug discovery and manufacturing. Contract organizations even allow virtual companies to exist by the simple fact that they can rely on contract manufacturers and researchers. Initially, big pharma companies utilized these contract manufacturing organizations solely to supply cost efficiencies, capacity, reduced time to market, and expertise which was not available in-house. So what is the role of contract manufacturing organizations in a product's life cycle? Well, during the introduction phase, large pharma will often call upon a contract manufacturing organization to manufacture a new product which needs large investments in increased capacity or new technology. Once the product is launched and the commercial potential is confirmed, the investment occurs and production can be brought back in-house. During the growth and maturity phases, a contract manufacturing organization would be used to provide instantaneous capacity, allowing clients to level out peaks in demand. During the decline phase, large pharma companies can outsource production and minimize marketing costs to harvest as much profit as possible from old products. Thus, a contract manufacturing organization can play an important role throughout the entire life of a product. The relationship between a contract manufacturing organization and large pharma was pretty simple in the past. Large pharma was in control of the product and all associated know-how. The contract manufacturing organization simply functioned as an extension of the production department of the pharmaceutical company. In terms, the pharmaceutical company owns the know-how and manages the transfer of technology, whereas the contract manufacturing organization had limited know-how, minimal involvement in technology transfer, and simply provided manufacturing capacity in terms of equipment, labor, and specific technology. There is now a new business model developing for startup biotechnology companies, which enables them to minimize the required investment for startup. These biotech companies or innovators can form partnerships with contract organizations. These can be contract research organizations, contract formulators, contract analytical laboratories, contract manufacturing organizations, a marketing partner, and regulatory consultants. In many cases, these contract organizations can offer more than one service. In addition to reducing the amount of investments needed to start up a biotech company, the reason for using these contract organizations include solving technological challenges, providing scalable process equipment, providing the expertise for validation, compliance to good manufacturing practices, knowledge and expertise in regulatory documentation, and expertise in project management. As more companies are moving away from traditional manufacturing, contract manufacturing organizations are becoming the principal provider of technological expertise. Companies are often attracted to the newest technological breakthroughs, and contract manufacturing organizations must serve as consultants to educate clients on the pros and cons of each technological choice. In the case of many emerging pharmaceutical products, the primary challenge is to make viable production possible. Contract manufacturing organizations need to invest in technology and personnel. Thus, research and development, validation, production, and maintenance staff must be trained and have as much exposure to information about new technologies as possible. Contract manufacturing organizations can provide scalable process equipment to biotech companies. A new business often starts at the lab or pilot scale. Clients prefer to scale up without having to change the manufacturing site. So equipment selection can improve the chances of attracting a new business. Contract manufacturing organizations can provide project management. New projects can involve multiple organizations. All functions from all partners will become involved at one time or another. The project scope will evolve, and scope changes must be managed carefully. Contract manufacturing organizations thus become the technical expertise providers, and they must act accordingly. Contract manufacturing organizations can provide expertise in regulatory documentation. New projects begin at the preclinical stage, and the process is improved during development. Batches are produced for development, scale-up, stability, clinical trials, and process validation. Pre-approval inspection may occur years later. Thus, it's essential that good documentation practices are followed at all times. Contract manufacturing organizations can provide expertise in validation. Validation is defined as the documented evidence that provides a high degree of assurance that a specific process, facility, or support system will consistently produce a product meeting a predetermined specifications and quality attributes. Validation helps assure that products are safe, pure, and effective. As part of the validation process, there's a need for small-scale GMP batches has increased, so R&D equipment needs to be quantified in terms of IQ and OQ. IQ, or the installation quantification, verifies the equipment's design features and ensures that it is installed correctly. OQ, or the operational quantification, verifies that the manufacturing process is achieving its operational requirements. Cleaning validation is one of the largest challenges for contract manufacturing organizations, since dedicated equipment is not economical. Contract manufacturing organizations can ensure compliance to GMP standards. Most client companies intend to market their products globally. As a result, their quality systems must meet the regulations in multiple markets, as well as the company's own internal standards. Since many of these companies don't have their own internal resources, these companies tend to rely on the contract manufacturing organization's quality systems. The Good Manufacturing Practice Regulations establishes minimum GMP for the methods to be used, the facilities or controls to be used, the manufacture, processing, packaging, or holding of a drug to assure that the drug is safe, has the appropriate identity and strength, and meets quality and purity characteristics. Since the goal of most companies is to market their products globally, the good manufacturing practices exist in all major markets: Europe, Asia, and the US. The International Conference on Harmonization has aligned these GMPs between the major markets. However, the interpretation can still be an issue, and the emphasis may differ from market to market. The basics of the current manufacturing practices regulate quality control, ensuring that the product meets specifications; quality assurance, that systems ensure the control and consistency; and most importantly, the validation; and documentation. Good manufacturing practices apply to drug products. There are additional details for biologically derived products, as well as additional details for products derived from human cells or tissues. It is also important to note that both over-the-counter drugs and nutraceuticals are exempt from GMP. One aspect controlled by current good manufacturing practices are raw materials. These can include active ingredients and excipients. It is essential to audit suppliers on a regular basis. Even before entering into a contract, one should review the regulatory history of the supplier. It's also important to, on a regular basis, monitor their regulatory compliance. It's also equally important and established under GMP to test the incoming raw materials. Another issue that is regulated by GMP standards are building and facilities. GMP standards require a separate or defined area as being necessary to prevent contamination or cross-contamination or mix-ups. GMP standards define the air filtration systems required in the production areas, as well as sanitation requirements. Another aspect controlled by GMP standards are production and process controls, or standard operating procedures, or SOPs. These are written production and process control procedures that must be followed during manufacturing. These must be documented at the time of performance. Any deviation from these procedures must be recorded and explained or justified. Standard operating procedures must contain the following: the purpose or scope of the work, the materials to be used, and the procedure to be followed. These must be written in proper order. They must include sufficient detail for the operator to follow. They should include checks for calculations. They must include the initials or signatures of the operator, and they must have the supervisor's review and signature. These should be reviewed and updated as needed. Good manufacturing practices outline the process of in-process testing. In-process testing must have written procedures and testing of product while being manufactured to assure batch uniformity and integrity. Control procedures must be established to monitor output and to validate manufacturing processes. Good manufacturing practices also regulate packaging and labeling operations. A company must have written procedures designed to assure that correct labels, labeling, and packaging materials are used for drug products. Such written procedures must be followed. Label mix-ups have been a major reason for drug product recalls. Good manufacturing practices also provide for laboratory controls prior to a product being released for distribution. For each batch of product, there must be laboratory determination of satisfactory conformance to final specifications for the drug product, including the identity and strength of each active ingredient prior to release. There must be appropriate laboratory testing as necessary for each batch required to be free of objectionable microorganisms. Good manufacturing practices also provides for the review of production records. Production and control records must be reviewed and approved by the quality control unit of the company. This is to determine compliance with all established, approved written procedures before a batch is released or distributed. So in conclusion, contract manufacturing organizations and contract research organizations will have to adapt to this new business environment. Successful Contract manufacturing organizations and contract research organizations will be the ones with the strongest technical staff capable of participating in multidisciplinary projects, following good manufacturing practices and providing the needed technical and regulatory expertise.